Well, unfortunately, I am stuck here because it is snowing like mad right now, and I am. Looks like I might be buried. Thank God I went grocery shopping yesterday. It's nasty out there, very nasty. But before I get into the main topic of the video, which is previewing Fastlane, I got a few other things to get out of the way. First of all, movie recommendation. If you have not seen Kingsman: The Secret Service, go do so. It's a lot of fun. It is really the perfect shut your brain off and enjoy the ride type of movie. Not that it's dumb, it's just really over the top and really, it's a lot of fun, let me say that. And the best description I can give it, I read this in a review somewhere, it's basically James Bond, and by James Bond I mean classic James Bond, like the Connery and the Roger Moore era. It's basically classic James Bond meets Kick-Ass. And of course, you know, Vaughn is the director, so of course that was going to happen. But it's over the top and ridiculous, but in the best, most exciting, and most fun possible way. So if that sounds at all interesting to you, go check it out. You will have a good time. I highly recommend it. A couple other things. Because I'm stuck here and I have nowhere to go, I've been catching up on a lot of my TV. Got all caught up on Parks and Recreation, and I saw John Cena's cameo in this week's episode. John Cena's a funny guy. Like, that's the weird thing about him on WWE programming. On WWE programming, he is so annoying and so one-note and such a corporate shill that whenever I see him in anything else, like when he's outside of the WWE umbrella, and he has like this, it's a small cameo role, but he was funny. And it's like, why can't we get this John Cena on TV more often? Instead, we get the Baptist preacher who talks like a promoter more than he does a wrestler. His jokes are terrible. His lines are terrible. His mere presence makes me not want to watch the show. It's just, it's amazing. And when I bash John Cena in reviews and whatever, I try to keep in mind that, or at least I try to convey for others to keep in mind that I think deep down there is a really good performer in there in John Cena. He probably could be amazing if he was given the opportunity and not hampered by shitty writing. And I think that's most of his problem a majority of the time. So I just wanted to bring that up because I thought it was interesting. But anyway, let's get on to some news that happened this week. Samoa Joe is no longer with TNA. That's, I guess it's a big headline. The problem, though, and what keeps me from thinking of it as being that big of a deal, is that Joe has been so broken down in TNA to the point where it's so hard to care. I mean, if he's going to have any chance of continuing his career as like a significant name, he had to leave TNA because really, and I know I've said this before, Joe basically became to TNA what Mark Henry and Big Show and Kane are in the WWE, in that it feels like once a year you're going to get some effort to try and rebuild Big Show, Kane, or Mark Henry as a monster, even though they've been ruined for years and such an effort would only be in vain because you really can't fix it. Joe was kind of like that in TNA, where it felt like once a year at least they would try to do something with him to try and recapture the old Samoa Joe magic. But when they fucked it up so bad that you know, it just didn't work anymore, and every time they tried, it just fell flat, and it just never worked. So I think Joe getting away from TNA is good for him, and a change of setting will be great for him. I know in Truth Slayer's video he talked about the possibility of Joe going to New Japan. If Joe can go, and if Joe can bring his A game and be the Samoa Joe of old, like he was in the early days of Ring of Honor, and even in TNA, like his first, I'll say, year and a half or so in TNA, where he was just amazing. If he can bring that level of awesome to some of the guys he could work with in New Japan, I think it'd be great. Him and AJ obviously would be a great match. Him and Ishii, I think, could have a great match. Him and Makabe, I'm picturing already in my head, because I want Makabe and Ishii for the never openweight title again, but I'm already picturing like Samoa Joe thrown into that mix. I'm like, oh my god. Again, if Joe can go and Joe can recapture that old magic, I think it'd be great. Him and Tanahashi, him and Okada, him and Nakamura. There's plenty of options out there for good matches. Again, if Samoa Joe can bring it. I'm not sure, because in TNA you can't really tell, because he's again, he'd been devalued so much that it's hard to really gauge anything. It was kind of like, well, again, it's like, you know, various runs with Kane, Big Show, or Mark Henry, where it's like, oh, he's a monster again. And it's like, sure he is. He's going to lose to John Cena. Well, yep, there you go. And that's it. So, you know, hopefully they're able to, hopefully, you know, I've heard Joe's gotten a lot of offers, obviously. He's a big free agent right now. He could go to NXT. I've heard that rumor thrown around, which would be interesting. I'm not sure how he would work on the main WWE show, but I think in NXT, I think there's plenty of stuff for him to do. Him versus Owens would probably be something worth building up to. Yeah, and then of course he could always go back to Ring of Honor, his old stomping grounds, and see what they can do with him there. So yeah, he's got plenty of options, and I'm sure he's gotten plenty of phone calls and plenty of offers, as he himself has stated, although he hasn't named any specifics. But obviously it's a big free agent being out there in the market, and you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens or where he ends up or how everything goes for him. I wish him the best, obviously. I think, like I said, he needed to get away from TNA, because that relationship was not helping anybody by the end, because it felt like Joe's career was pretty much dead in the water, and TNA, I mean, at that point it was just they were just pushing damaged goods at that point, so it really wasn't helping anybody involved. And I could go on and on and on about how TNA fucked up so many things with Joe and so many things in the past. Again, to reference True Slayer's last video, he talked about how Monty Brown should have been one of the top stars in TNA, and I'll never forget it. The minute they turned Monty Brown heel, Destination X 2005, I was like, you fucked up. I remember watching that show and just being like, you fucked up. You fucked it up. And my argument against turning Monty Brown heel was that Monty was not going to eclipse Jarrett. It wasn't going to happen. Jarrett was going to be the top heel no matter what, so Monty was just going to get lost in limbo, and sure enough, within 2 months, he was tagging with Billy Gunn, doing nothing. And then when TNA got on the Spike TV, I remember saying with friends, I was like, all right, you know what they should do? Just ignore that they've done nothing with him for 5 months. Ignore the heel turn. Just forget that it ever happened. They're on Spike TV, clean slate, clean everything. Just start from scratch. Let him do some squash matches. Let him get over again. And just pretend like the heel turn never happened. And it looked like they were going to do that at first. I'm like, okay, you can fix this. And then they turned him heel again, and it was like, oh, fuck it. It's like, oh, fuck. And then, sure enough, in less than a year, he was gone, and the run was over. And again, I mean, I'm not that Monty was the most talented wrestler in the world, but he was somebody that had charisma, got over, had a great gimmick, great presentation, great promos that everybody liked. Cool finisher, could get over with squash matches, could be built as a monster. I mean, you had all these things. He was the first guy, when TNA first got onto FSN, he was the first guy that got over in that era. Because, you know, before I watched, and FSN was when I started watching TNA, before they got onto FSN, I'd heard of AJ Styles, I'd heard of AMW, and I'd heard of some of the X Division guys and various other things, you know, and I heard that Jarrett and Raven were there, and I'd heard of Abyss and various others, but Monty was the first guy that I'd never heard of that got onto TNA during that era, and I was like, whoa, awesome, push that guy, that's the guy you run with. And it just didn't pan out. For whatever reason, it just didn't pan out. I don't know. TNA just, they made a mistake there. They made a giant mistake, and it robbed Joe of an opponent to have down the road when Joe was having his big undefeated streak. I mean, they did have a triple threat match with Rhino involved, but Monty was really just in that match to eat the pin. There was no real big feud between Joe and Monty, which I think could have been a big deal. And then, of course, they fucked up the whole Kurt Angle Samoa Joe thing. When Angle first debuted, and he headbutted Joe, I said right off the bat, I was like, if they do this match before Bound for Glory 2007, they fucked up. They need to get a year-long build-up out of this shit. This would be the feud that would like build TNA up, and just give them that really killer long-term build-up to really, and I felt could have really put them on the map, but no, what'd they do? They hot-shotted it at the next pay-per-view, and Angle won, and then they did the match 12 more times, and it, you know, the more you do it, the less special it feels. And it just blew my mind. I was like, I cannot believe that you hot-shotted this match. When I heard they were doing Angle Joe at the next pay-per-view, I was like, are you kidding me? Why? Why bother? Why are you doing this? And it was like, I'm sure somebody must have told them. It's like, look, you got to build this up for a long time. You can't just hotshot it at the next pay-per-view. Somebody, there had to have been somebody in TNA that said it and just got shot down, because I can't imagine you have all this interest, you have all this intrigue, you got Kurt Angle, Samoa Joe's been built up really well up to this point, all the parts are in place, and then I would have been like, do the headbutt segment, do that whole thing, and then find ways to keep them away from each other for a year. And that's where creative has to step up their game, and the bookers have to step up their game and find ways to hold off on that. And I go back to it all the time. Even though they fucked up the match, WCW's greatest feud was Sting and Hogan in '97. And the reason for that is because they didn't blow the match off right away. They allowed the story to build and grow and develop, and Sting got his new character over, and Hogan got more heat as the bad guy, and the NWO got more powerful, which gave Sting a bigger obstacle to overcome. And that led to a bunch of things where Sting wasn't on TV one week, maybe he'd be on next week. What would he do? Would he say anything? Would he do anything? Would he attack the NWO? Would he just stand there and point at them? All this intrigue, and the story just kept building and building and building. And my two favorite moments out of that build-up were the ending to Uncensored, when Sting came down and finally attacked the NWO. That was awesome. And the moment where the Sting Army, with all the Sting impersonators, flooded the ring, and the NWO knocked them all away like gnats, one by one. And then all of a sudden, I'll never forget it, Buff Bagwell punches one of the Stings, and the Sting he punched no-sells it, and you knew immediately, the fans reacted right away. It's like, oh my god, that's the real Sting. And then Sting just cleaned house. It was amazing. Probably my favorite moment in the history of Monday Nitro. Just really cool and very well done. I mean, it reminded me of, as much as I love the Austin Zamboni incident as being one of my favorite moments for Stone Cold's character, I put that moment, the Sting Army segment, up there as my favorite moment for Sting's character. It was just fantastic. And Starrcade 97 did a ginormous buy rate that year because of they took their time with the build-up, and they held it off, and they held it off, and then when they finally delivered it, they reaped short-term benefits. Unfortunately, as I've said before, they fucked the match up, and that did so much long-term damage. That's a whole another discussion for another time, but the build-up was very good. And it was because they took their time, they showed patience, and they took a year to do it. And I think TNA should have done the same thing with Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle. That was the match that people wanted to see. They fucked it up. Actually, I remember when they had their match at Lockdown 08, when Joe finally won the belt. And I was watching it with a friend of mine. He turned to me and just went, "Could you imagine how big this match would be if this was the first time they faced each other?" I'm like, I know. Let's not go down that road again, dude. I've said my piece on that. I was just shaking my head. I'm like, you're absolutely right. Could you imagine if they had held off all the way until Lockdown 08 and then finally done the match, how big that would have been? But that might have been too long. But even then, I mean, if the fans show interest in something, they'll flock to it when they eventually get it. So my idea is, like, let's build it up and make it, make it mean as much as possible, so that make the fans want to crawl across broken glass to see it. Like, don't just give them everything on a silver platter just right off the bat. But yeah, Samoa Joe's going from TNA. Not very shocking. I mean, most of the TNA standbys seem to be jumping off ship. They lost Daniels, they lost Kazarian, they lost AJ, they lost Samoa Joe now. So it's yeah, it'll be interesting to see where Joe goes from here and what he's able to do. And yeah, I look forward to seeing that. So, there is that. But the other big thing I wanted to talk about in this video was previewing WWE's Fastlane, which is happening tomorrow night. The thing is, I almost said TNA. If WWE did a better job of making their titles seem important and building their stories, this actually would not be that bad of a card. It actually would be fairly solid, especially for the B pay-per-view that's just a throwaway before WrestleMania. And I've said my piece before. I've said, if there are two pay-per-views that the WWE could afford to get rid of, it's the February pay-per-view and the post-WrestleMania pay-per-view, and just let, like, WrestleMania kind of dominate that time period. And just, if they didn't have a pay-per-view between the Rumble and WrestleMania, I think it would help the build up to WrestleMania a lot more. But there's no title match on this card, which I think is smart. Although it does kind of make the Royal Rumble feel pointless given what the main event is, but they kind of had to do that for the main event, giving the negative reaction to the Royal Rumble, so whatever. Whatever happens, happens. But going over the card, I believe there are 7 matches. You got the Usos versus Tyson Kidd and Cesaro for the tag titles. I doubt that Kidd and Cesaro will win. I think they should. I think I like the pairing. My idea was just put them down in NXT and let them be awesome, because NXT could use a few more tag teams, and I think they'd be better suited there. I think they'd be allowed to shine more on that stage. I mean, Tyson Kidd and Cesaro in NXT and what they are on the main roster, it's almost like night and day. A lot of that has to do with how they're booked, but it's just kind of the typical tag team build-up. Kidd and Cesaro won some non-title matches, so it's like, okay, there, and obviously there are some tie-ins to Total Divas with Natalya and Naomi, and it's like, I really don't care. I guess it's more than most other tag title matches that they do, and at least they're not doing Usos versus Miz and Mizdow again, because I swear to God they did that match almost every week for 3 months. But I'll pick the Usos to win, because I think the Ascension's ultimately going to take the belts off of them. But if it were up to me, I would give it to Kidd and Cesaro just to shake things up. But if the end game is to put the belts on the Ascension, I guess it's better to have them take it off of faces than off of heels. So Usos will retain the tag titles. What else? You got the Divas Championship, Paige versus Nikki Bella. Nikki Bella's the champion. Again, this wouldn't be terrible if I cared about the build-up or anything. I'm still trying to figure out how Paige turned face again. I'm still trying to figure out why Brie and Nikki like each other again. And I'm not going to let that go, because it's like, no, they fucked up their story. Cry it from on top of the mountain. Their story makes no goddamn sense. But and that's why it's harder to invest in the Divas these days. But although the naked Paige bit they did on Raw this week was, I don't mind Paige being naked. If she had to wrestle naked, I wouldn't have complained. But anyway, Nikki's probably going to retain the title, because we're back into that standard formula of the only divas that matter are the champion, her tag team partner, whoever she's working with, and her tag team partner. It's like a few years ago when I think it was Kelly and Eve Torres versus the Bellas every week for like 6 months, it felt. And that was all. It was just the never-ending cycle of those 4, and they're the only 4 that matter. I'm like, you do have other girls, and you can have depth and diversity of character and stuff like that, but whatever. Yeah, Nikki will probably retain. Yeah, the Intercontinental Championship match, Dean Ambrose versus Bad News Barrett. Bad News Barrett is the champion. Again, it wouldn't be a bad match. It's not a bad match. I wouldn't even have a problem with Ambrose being quote-unquote demoted to the IC title level, because back in the day, the IC title level was like a really high spot. I mean, look at New Japan right now. Nakamura is the quote-unquote Intercontinental Champion, this quote-unquote second-tier champion, and he's like the number 3 guy in the fucking promotion. So if you make the spot important, it doesn't matter if it's the second-tier belt or not. It's not main event, but it's it should be fucking important, but the IC title hasn't been important for a long time, and I've made the point that they should just unify the IC and US titles, because, why have 2 mid-card titles, And it'll mean more if you're champion if there are less belts around, so, I would, and that's one thing that New Japan, I mean, they have a shitload of titles with the NWA belts being defended there too. It's like, oh my God, they've got this is like 2000 WWE almost with the amount of championships they have. But yeah, whatever. It'll probably be a good match. I would probably put the IC title on Dean at this point, just because they need to build him back up after fucking him up so badly after Hell in a Cell and the feud with Bray that didn't help anybody, except maybe, it gave Bray like 80 wins, so he kind of looks credible heading into Taker, which I've said before, needing an opponent for Undertaker should not have been the reasoning for giving Bray Wyatt a string of victories. He should have had that anyway. And just because Undertaker may or may not work Mania, that shouldn't have been the reasoning for giving Bray all those wins. That's something they should have been doing all along. They never should have broken up the Wyatt family. What are Eric Rowan and Luke Harper doing now? Nothing. Whatever. So there's that. I'm trying to remember everything else on this card. I think there's a 6-man tag. It'll be Ziggler, Ryback, and Eric Rowan. Oh, Eric Rowan is doing something, I guess. Whatever. Versus Seth Rollins and J&J Security. This is whatever. I'm sure the babyfaces will win. They'll get a pin over Noble or Mercury, and that'll be it. And that's whatever. It won't be bad because you got Seth and Dolph in there to make it work. It'll be a filler match, but it'll be fine. But babyfaces will get their feel-good win there, and that'll be it. What else is on this card? You got the United States Championship match, Rusev defending against John Cena. Simply put, I love that they built up Rusev for such a long time. I think he's worked very well in the role. It's nice that they actually do. And for all the bashing I do of how they treat Mark Henry, Big Show, and Kane, and whenever they present them as monsters, and it sucks because nobody buys it because they lose all the time, Rusev is a believable monster because he wins all the fucking time and he kills people. Like, imagine that. And unfortunately, I kind of feel like he's going to be the sacrificial lamb for John Cena. Not here. I think Rusev will walk out of this pay-per-view with the U.S. title, whether that be through a disqualification or he gets a cheap victory over John or whatever. I think Rusev's going to keep the title here, and then he's going to drop the belt at WrestleMania to John Cena, and that'll be how they do that. Hopefully they don't completely disregard Rusev after Cena beats him, because he's good and there's potential there, and I don't think one loss is going to ruin him. But it is kind of that thing, like what I talked about with Undertaker and Bray. It is kind of sad that, oh, we kept a guy undefeated for a year just so we can ultimately feed him to John Cena. It's like, okay. It's like, sure, all right. What else? But Rusev is keeping the U.S. title regardless. After this show. Mania, different story. What else? Oh, there's also Goldust versus Stardust, which is a match that probably should have been saved for WrestleMania. And again, the idea for the match is not bad. Again, it's kind of where the booking is really the main problem, because Stardust and Goldust were unimportant for so long after they lost the tag titles. Well, no, actually, they lost the tag titles to the New Age Outlaws, then they sucked, and they kind of flushed them down the drain and whatever, and made them jobbers. Then Cody reinvented himself as Stardust. Then they got that initial bump. It's like, okay, this is pretty cool, let's run with this. And then they did nothing with it, and then they turned heel for no reason, and it's like, okay, what the fuck? So they just became kind of this random, senseless tag team that was just filling up space, when I felt like there was more potential for stories, and Cody is really good. And here's the thing, some people shit on the Stardust gimmick. The gimmick is not bad. The idea for the gimmick is not bad. Cody is not bad in the role. Cody takes everything he's given and just runs with it to the top of the mountain as far as he can go. He is one of the hardest, most competent workers in the WWE in being able to take whatever the fuck they give him and make it work to some degree. It's just that they don't do anything with it. It's just, I mean, Cody's doing everything he can. Dashing Cody Rhodes was not a failure because of Cody. He did everything he could with it. He played that character to the hilt. His Intercontinental title run being a failure wasn't his fault. I said it again. It's like there was no reason to job him out to Big Show at WrestleMania. That was stupid. That was incredibly stupid. And you know how I feel vindicated about that? They said that we got to give Big Show his big feel-good win. We got to give him his WrestleMania moment. Nobody gives a fuck now. Nobody remembers that happened. But if you had kept Cody strong going past WrestleMania, and he can keep the title by getting himself DQ'd or whatever the fuck. I don't care. It's just he should have walked out of WrestleMania with the belt, but they fucked it up, and then Cody went right back to doing nothing. Legacy, how many handicap matches did they lose? I mean, is it Cody's fault that he's a piece of shit that got fed to John Cena in 2-on-1 situations? I mean, is that Cody's fault? Is it Cody and Ted's fault that DX absolutely butt raped them at the Hell in a Cell match? I mean, Cody having all these gimmicks and runs that didn't pan out and make him into a big star, it's through no fault of his own. The Rhodes brothers, when they first became a team, they had the emotional backstory, they had the sympathy built in after Cody got fired. They had so many things going right for them. They beat the Shield for the tag titles, which felt like a big deal. And then it was like, all right, we got nothing. Is that Cody's fault? No, that's the writing and the booking. And even here, you look at this feud. I guess Stardust subscribed to the Adam Rose school of turning heel, which is he turns heel once a week for like 3 or 4 weeks in a row. Because how many times did Adam Rose come out and attack the Bunny after the match was over? And it's like, all right, so is he officially a heel yet? Because I don't know what they were doing. I throw my hands up. I have absolutely no idea what they did there. It's just like, at what point does the Bunny look like an idiot for continuously going out there with Adam Rose, the guy who constantly hurts him? Why is he still out there? Why are the Rosebuds not reacting like last week's beating happened? I don't understand. And it was kind of the same thing with Stardust and Goldust, where Stardust already beat up Goldust, already badmouthed him and trash talk him week after week, and it's like he's already a heel at this point. And then on Raw this week, they did the whole thing where Stardust turned heel again, and it's like, okay, very, very repetitive there. But anyway, I like the idea for the match. I wish they were saving it for Mania. I think that would be a better place to do it. Hopefully they're able to make something work here and make it good, and kind of show people, it's like, look, this could have been so much more than what it's been promoted as, or what it's what people think of it. But and again, I feel bad for Cody, because he just always gets the shaft, and it's a shame, it's unfortunate, but what can you do? Excuse me. And then we have the main event, Daniel Bryan versus Roman Reigns, with the winner facing Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. Kind of makes the Royal Rumble feel pointless, and this is another one of the reasons I kind of get annoyed with the February pay-per-view. So often they will put the title shot at WrestleMania up at the February pay-per-view, which to me like kind of makes the Rumble feel pointless. It's like, well, then why have this big 30-man contenders match for WrestleMania and then have him put up his contendership at the next pay-per-view? It just feels like, I don't know. One of the reasons I feel like those shows doesn't need to be there, but this feels like a plan B after people shat all over the Royal Rumble this year, and with good reason. I did my fair share of shitting. We'll see how the match goes. If they have Roman go over, which I think they will, if they have Roman go over, I think they're basically committing career suicide with him, because they want him to be the next John Cena. They want him to be the next big babyface. Having him beat the most popular guy that everybody wants in the main event spot is not going to help him. It's only going to make the fans hate him more. And it's not going to work. It would have been like, because for years I feared that John Cena was going to be the one that ended the streak. The Undertaker streak, because it's like, because I could see them doing that, where it would be like, see, John Cena is the greatest of all time. He beat the Undertaker at WrestleMania, and I was like, if they ever do that, the fans are just going to hate John Cena even more. So it's not going to do anybody any favors, unless you need to give that win to a heel, which, to their credit, they at least gave it to a heel. I could trash the execution of it, but at least you do have to give a win like that to a heel for it to get the desired effect. But anyway, Daniel Bryan and Roman, I would hope that Daniel Bryan would win, but I'm not going to hold my breath waiting for it. Some people have said that there might be a three-way, which is that going to be a hilarious WrestleMania tradition where they have to put Daniel Bryan in the main event at WrestleMania every year because they fucked up the Royal Rumble, and then people complain. It's like, oh shit, well, let's do a three-way and stick Daniel Bryan in there. And it's like, and it's so easily avoidable too. It's like, look, just put Daniel Bryan in that spot to begin with, and you won't have this fucking problem. I mean, what are you not getting? I mean, the fans, and some WWE defenders kind of get on the Daniel Bryan fans for, quote, ruining the shows or whatever. But it's like, look, the fans like what they like, and they don't like what they don't like. Okay, I'm not a robot, and I'm not a sheep that just follows whatever the WWE tells me to do. I know what I don't like, and I know what I like. I like Daniel Bryan. He's the guy I like. It's as simple as that. I mean, and Roman Reigns, they want to ram him down our throats, and I said back in summer of last year that he's not ready yet, and they need to slow down with him and let him find his footing and grow and develop a little bit more. You can't just force him into that spot. I mean, and not to say that limited workers can't take the top spot. I mean, Ultimate Warrior's a good example of that. Goldberg's a good example of that. Some would even say Hogan. But if the fans aren't buying what they're selling, then you gotta go to Plan B and come up with another plan, or come up with another method of doing what you wanted to do. I mean, truthfully speaking, isn't Daniel Bryan versus the gargantuan Brock Lesnar a far more interesting match on paper than Reigns versus Lesnar? Again, I'm just shrugging my shoulders and I just go, that's what I think. But whatever. I'm still pretty sure that Seth is going to cash in the Money in the Bank at the end of WrestleMania this year anyway, so it might not even matter who wins this match ultimately. And I do think that that's a good idea, and if they do it, it's great. But because it's never happened before, and I think it would be a great way for Seth to really give him the... and granted, I am sick of the Shock WrestleMania cash-ins, but I think not WrestleMania, the Shock Money in the Bank cash-ins, but I think doing it at WrestleMania would... be like, that would be an interesting new thing to do with it, because it's never happened at the big show, it's never happened at WrestleMania, so I think that would be a new way to freshen it up rather than just doing it on a Raw or the Royal Rumble or something like that. So that is my preview for Fastlane. That is all I have for right now. I'm probably going to be snowed in for the remainder of this weekend, so I will definitely be watching Fastlane, because what the fuck else am I going to do? Hope you all enjoy the show, those of you that are going to watch it. Those of you that canceled the WWE Network, I don't think you're missing too much. If anything, the only things you're missing are NXT, which, by the way, that Neville Owens match on NXT this week was fantastic. That was a great match. Really enjoyed that. And I really like what they're doing so far with Owens as champion, because NXT has never had that big monster brute violent champion. They've never had that. At least not since I've been watching. I mean, Bo Dallas was champion, but he was kind of a weasel and a comedy character. Neville, they teased a heel turn, but they never went all the way with it, so he was more of a tweener. And really just a setup for Sami Zayn to win the title. So it'll be interesting to see what NXT is able to do with a Vader-like character. My only knocks on Kevin Owens, I wish he'd work on his look a little bit. I'm not talking about him having a gut and his size or anything. I mean, that's fine. You can have a gut and still have a great look. I mean, Samoa Joe, Bray Wyatt, to some degree, although he seems to have slimmed down a lot. But there are a bunch of other guys, One Man Gang, King Kong Bundy, Earthquake, guys that, yeah, they're fat, but, they work on their look and make themselves look intimidating or over the top or make themselves stand out. Owens looked like he rolled out of bed and just threw his shirt on. It's like, okay, time to go wrestle. I wish he'd put a little bit more effort into his presentation, because right now he's just he looks like an ordinary guy in the crowd almost, and that's not what you want your Monster Brute champion to look like. I'm not saying he has to dress like a gladiator or dress like a comic book character or anything like that, but his outfit could use a little bit of work. Just my take on it. But that is all I have for now. Like I said, I'm going to be snowed in all weekend, so yay for me. I gotta dig my car out too. That's even gonna be fun. That's gonna be more fun right there. But that is all I have for now. Should also let you know that the Godzilla video that I planned on doing, which coincidentally I'm wearing my Godzilla shirt right now, the big one with all my movie reviews all in one video, I'm in the process of finishing it right now. It'll have all the movie clips and all the music cut out of it, so I won't get dinged for copyright infringement or whatever. So it'll be good to post. It's going to be super long, but I'll have a table of contents so you can jump to whichever movie you want to see the review for and everything. So that'll probably be up sometime next weekend. So be on the lookout for that for those of you who are interested. And that is all I have for now. So until then, peace out, everybody.